You're unmuted. You're all set.
Okay. So this is the March 21st meeting of the Bristol Planning Commission. It is 7:02. I want to bring the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to review agenda for addition, removal, or adjustment of any items. There's a couple modifications I'd like to make. We will not have Adam here from regional planning tonight to do his thing. So there's a couple things I stuffed in here that we can start the process of discussion. May not go very deep, but at least we can start some thinking. The first one is underneath 2B, continued discussion of high density residential district. I'd like to change that to a discussion on Heinsberg lot bonuses. That item had referred that document to us at the last meeting. And then underneath item 3, new business, I would like to add town plan implementation actions centered around the planning commission items. Within that town plan of actions. It was on the February agenda. We tabled it based on time. It was kept in the parking lot. Again, I think we just need to get our feet wet and see where we want to go with that. Is there anything else? Okay, so we will.
I do have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Should we just put off ADU conversation till Adam can be here?
No, I don't think we need to. So that would be the next item, right?
Yeah.
So I think what we can do is come to some understanding if we want to put something back in underneath 3E, and then we'll broach him with it the next month and save him maybe sitting through that discussion. So we'll move on to item 2, which we'll continue discussion on bylaw modernization, which the first AA is the rewrite, consider rewrite of section 3E of the ADU section zoning being proposed. And I want to limit that conversation to like 15 minutes and either come to a consensus of something to stick back in there or we don't and move on with it. So I think, John, you were going to give it some thought and propose something.
I've not already proposed something, but I have given it some thought. And before proposing something, the reason I didn't do that was because couple of reasons.
I have a question though. Are we supposed to approve the minutes? Or I can't find my agenda. I can't bring it up.
Okay, so we had last few, you should have an email.
Mm-hmm.
Or not?
Yeah, I just couldn't find it right now. That's,
Yeah,
I didn't.
the minutes are later on in administrative matters. Melissa,
Okay,
get them
okay.
again.
All right,
You won't
sorry.
get to them.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
That's a good question.
Do we
John.
have the
Fine.
text of section 3E available?
So you weren't here, so.
It's in the meeting notes from 2/21. You have that
I
package
looked at
yourself.
I looked at the notes.
So we had discussed 3E, which had to do with limiting the character essentially to like light materials and construction in the area or something like that.
Right.
And
Yes,
we ultimately struck it. And then John was going to repropose something for that for us to consider.
So this is how I came at it. These are some of my premises, 5 things. ADUs are permitted use already in Bristol. An ADU is a residence dwelling unit, not the same as an accessory building, a shed or garage. And the bylaws say accessory building cannot be a dwelling. An ADU adds new use to an existing property and additional residential use. The permit for an ADU is for the existing property, including the main house and whatever uses are on that property now, not just for the ADU. Zoning, sort of basic zoning 101 holds that existing residential uses are due the highest protection. Zoning 101, basic zoning holds also that adding new uses to existing residential zones, infill development, increasing density is due more scrutiny, not less, from zoning officials. And like I said, ADUs are a permitted use in Bristol. We can't stop them unless we change our regs. We can't stop them if they meet the regulations we have now for them, which is basically setback height and septic, the same regulations we have for single family homes now. So really, we're already doing what the state is, the legislature is considering, except now the law as it's written gives us the latitude to create a simple review process for ADUs if we wanted to. If it passed S100, which is the bill that's moving, we started out talking about H68, but that apparently has been superseded.
Yes.
So the thing that's moving, as they say, is S100, which has the same language in it. It's effectively no different that I can tell. But anyway, S100 will prohibit us from doing so. That is passing some kind of simple review process if we wanted to do that, unless we applied the same standard to all single family home applications. So I asked myself, do we want to do that? Personally, I would want to do that. I think I've been upfront about that. And if I were going to do that, this gets me to the homework, what would the language be? And so I went to the regs that we have for guidance. If you look at the conditional use criteria, for example, on page 43 to 45 in the zoning regulations, that I would consider like a heavy kind of review. That's like for things that are, hard to fit into a zone, but maybe can fit in, and put enough conditions on them and they can fit and they go forward. But for this, since it's already permitted, it is an additional impact or potential impact on the zone or something like that, is where an ADU might be built. But I think we could have a light, LITE, light version of the conditional use guidelines. Just use them for sort of pointed, or another guideline that could be merged would be, if you look at the language for the design review standards. Likewise, I think some very helpful language that's very light. The design review is more like the tone and tenor of what I imagine, because they start with the presumption that this can go forward. It's a permitted use, and we're just going to make it fit. And we're going to make it fit by making sure that the builder is going to attend to various things that have an impact or potential impact on the neighbors' interests and the town's interests. So things like light and noise and parking and screening. If that's Pardon?
The same process we use for site plan review currently.
Yeah, it's basically the site plan review. So there's a form in there in our bylaws already. I think there's already guidance for how we could do that. And for ADUs, because they are permitted use, we're really talking about like site plan review light. Because again, like people building these, the assumption of these ADUs is that they're resident homeowners, right? They're building these things as an additional thing on their property, rental property. They're not professionals. They may or may not think about the impact of what they're going to build on the neighbors. And a simple process never threatens to stop them because it's already a permitted use in town. We're just going to say, hey, non-professional developer, have you thought about where you're going to put your lights? Do you know that we have a prohibition on, floodlight, pre-packed floodlight fixtures, for example? Do have you thought about, are you going to put your, where are you going to put your HVAC noise? You're going to put it where it's best for you in your yard and dump it on your neighbor? Or maybe we can talk about there's a better place. Those kinds of things are helpful. I've been through the design review process a number of times. I've been through the zoning process half a dozen times. I always come out with a better project because essentially it's my neighbor sitting there at the table saying, can you make this better? Or maybe it's actually some actual neighbors of the project who come in because the process gives them a place to be heard. And they can say, hey, this is how we use this corner of our yard. Can you think about doing something different with your proposal? I'm always adjust to that. So to me, it makes a better product. And I think, and Chris, I don't want you to take this personally. I don't want to get into to Garfield Street. That's how it happened is not my concern at the moment. But I think it's fair to say that as it stands today, like nobody's really happy with it. You know, like the neighbors aren't certainly happy. The town's not happy. And
Hey, you're making assumptions. I think that whole scope of that is blown out of proportions by people that are directly objective to it.
So.
well, I think if
So. Just to back up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna shut the conversation down in 6 minutes. So. Everything you've said is sort of a return of what we've been discussing today.
it adds up to, yeah.
So-
has-
We need something as to put down in writing underneath this 3E section. We've already got qualifications in there, or else move on one of the others.
So, yeah, I want to ask two questions, if I might.
Go ahead.
First is, if someone has a lot and is building a primary residence, do we review the sound, the lighting? Said it could be just as bad, or, right?
We don't, and
we don't.
I would propose that we think about that, but I'm
Well,
not
okay,
prepared to do that
that's-
now.
We're going down another.
Well,
road,
but-
okay? But all I'm saying is that this is imposing a condition on an ADU, which is not on the primary residence, but it can be just as, if it's going to be, I mean, neighbors do things all the time that other neighbors don't like. And you can talk to your neighbor or you can live with it. If a person who's not building a new residence, but they have a current residence, if they want to put in a heat pump, it's going to make noise, and we don't regulate whether it's next to the neighbor's house or whether
That's right.
which side.
And we don't
And I
necessarily-
think we want to I don't think the town of Bristol wants to get into that level of detail. So the question that I would have is, why are we differentiating?
I'll tell you why. It's very specific and it's zoning 101. Because an ADU is not just a single family house on a lot. It doesn't have anything else. I'm just answering the question. An ADU is an added use to a property that has a use, and the entire structure of zoning is built around protecting established uses, particularly and highest among them. Well, conservation is the highest, but the next highest is existing residential neighborhoods. So the state can tell us to pretend that there's no impact from an added dwelling on property, and we might go along with that, but that doesn't mean there isn't an impact. And if anybody wants to talk to people about what the impact is, I urge you to talk to the Basers or the other neighbors of that Garfield Street project, and they're losing sleep over it. And it doesn't have to be that way, because really they probably would have accepted it if it had a light review and got fitted in more according to, if they felt like they had to say, that's all.
So, John, I think to kind of augment on to Jeff's question is, you can't impose those requirements on an ADU project without imposing them on every.
Well, that's not true, actually. Under the current law, as it stands today in the statutes, we may, as the word goes. And if you look at the changes that are under consideration in S100, the one change is they cross out may and they put in shall, which ties our hands. So then we cannot, unless we regulate all single family homes that way, which I don't propose doing. But, the latest intelligence on S100 as of yesterday, I've spoken with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. I've spoken with our state representatives. I've spoken with other people I know in Montpelier who watched the process. S100 is currently opposed by the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. S100 may not pass at all. So, we're legislating for what might happen when we know what the rules say now. And we may, if we wish, and I'd like to know, I'll stop this conversation if we can go around quickly and say, do you really not want to regulate added density in the form of ADUs? And if not, I'll shut up. If that's really it, I'll take my arguments elsewhere. But, talk to the Basers. Ask them if the process if we had a different process, a very light review doesn't stop anything, can't be used to stop anything. It's a permitted use. Anyway, Jeff, you had another second question.
Well, no, I asked two questions, actually. One is about building a new primary residence. Second is a current primary residence if they decide to do things which impact the neighbors.
Yeah.
Which there are a lot of.
Yeah.
Well, the other question is this an adjudicatory body or is it a mediatory body? I mean, if the neighbor says, you know, I think it's going to be too noisy there, are we going to say, is the town going to say you have to move it to the other side? Or is this for the neighbors to hash it out?
Well, I think once it gets into a process like site plan review or something, there is a process. Yeah, I mean,
Well, it would
but-
be adjudicatory. The
but-
town would tell people
Absolutely.
where they could
Yeah,
put their.
site plan is heard by the DRB. which
Yeah,
is-
so then the town would say, you can put your heat pump here, but not here.
well, I've been through a
No, I'm
bunch
trying
of-
to understand.
yeah,
what
let
you're
me
saying.
spell
Because you're
explain
talking
that
about,
out.
you've also talked about the neighbors get to, you know, say what they think and whether, I didn't understand whether this is the neighbors to talk about it and the town to try to mediate something, or it's for the town to say, get into the very details of this goes here, this slide is okay, this slide is not okay.
Well, I think it doesn't happen quite on that level, and I don't know if you've been through a zoning process before.
Well, what level is it on then? It's not at that
Well,
level.
I think it can be like a light review. It is an official, it would be an official process. That's what gets people in. That's what creates the public process where the neighbors, if they have a say, can be heard. And if you talk to the neighbors around Garfield Street, one of the things that upsets them the most is that they weren't heard. They feel like they weren't heard. And
Okay, so we're at 7:19, which is the time limit that I had suggested. So is there an interest in continuing this conversation with respect to 3E on our ADU section?
Yeah, I have one comment, please. May I?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, all I want to say is, I'm on the design review board, which is now called Downtown Design Review Commission, I believe, something like this. And so we've done had many situations like this, and we have, all I can want to say is that it is a very helpful process to the owner who is considering a new or change to a building, whether it's something simple like a fence material or something a little more complicated. We've had no problems, and people have been very happy to go along with what we suggest to make the town, you know, what we all think is what we want. And some people come in really unprepared, really unprepared. And they have these very vague ideas. And if they just had started to build, it might not be such a great result. But with a little conversation, sometimes they have to come back with some better pictures and we have some more ideas. And they end up with a project that everybody is happy with. And I think this is the kind of process that I would think would be quite easy because it's not onerous at all. It's a little bit of time, but it's not an onerous process. So I think it's very much worth considering it's not against the law now, apparently. S100 or whatever it is as it stands says that we may do this. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. Anyway, that's basically it. Thank you.
Okay, so who wants to continue this conversation and develop? And somebody will have homework to develop what the verbiage is. We're not gonna hash it out here at the table.
I could do that for the next meeting for sure. I just wanted, I was hesitant to do it because the rule that's going to change what is in flux and might not pass. So I thought I would give you my principles tonight. And then depending on where we landed, I would actually try to draft something.
Would it make sense to wait overall until S100 and then possibly readdress it?
I think so.
I think we're working through these changes that we're considering. At some point, we're gonna look at the whole picture again. I'm not hung up on maybe things change because of legislative action by the time we get around to look at the zoning as a whole, but I don't wanna, I think we just need to get done. We've talked about this we've added three E during the discussion. It wasn't there before. We ended up taking it out. The question is, do we want to put it back in? And it doesn't seem to be, I mean, we hear why we should, but I don't see, I'm not sure if there's enough consensus to do that. So is there who, and I don't want to get into, we're going to vote for this and vote for that, but
I am okay with where we left that as having removed 3E. And obviously, if the legislation changed, we'll have to revisit it anyway. This isn't going to be going all finished and going to be voted on for a while anyway. So I think we need to move forward and on with other things. If somebody has a actual suggestion, we can review it at that time, but we've wasted a lot of time just bouncing the ball back and forth on this.
I did have one question, not specific about review or anything, but this section, does it apply just to the village or all of Bristol for the ADUs?
All of Bristol.
Okay,
Permitted.
Well,
everywhere.
actually, no, actually, it's not. It's all of Bristol except for the commercial district where single family houses are not permitted.
okay, well, that makes sense. But-
Conservation.
So, so
Oh,
I was
You can-
kind of asking about last time was that someone with a single story home basically can't have an ADU over their garage. And that cuts out all the people down 116. I mean,
Well,
not all of them. There's a lot of
that-
single.
but that's nonetheless the lay of the land by buying that particular piece of property. So we're not here looking to make it equal for everybody. We're making it look equal for whatever the lot is and the potential.
Right.
For it.
But I just don't understand why an ADU can't be taller than the house or the same height as the house. I just don't understand that.
So we did agree to that at the time, Melissa, so let's
Yeah,
resolve the question with 3E and move on. I hear
all right.
maybe,
I've got some sympathy from Melissa's point of view.
I,
That
Yeah.
30, no greater less than 30% or 20% of the height
Yeah.
of the other house is confusing. How about just picking a height? Or something simple like 900 square feet? You know, just
So-
pick a height.
well, we have the
Well,
square
see,
footage,
some-
but I mean,
let's-
like,
Let's not read,
the conversation's done. Thumbs up if you want to have 3E continued as part of the study. Got one.
It's me.
Thumbs up if you are interested in moving on and setting it aside.
I guess so.
Okay, that's what we're gonna do. Phew.
I would just ask everybody before we next talk about ADUs, between now and then, to talk to the neighbors around Garfield Street. There's a lot of lessons to be learned for us in that, and we don't want to repeat that, I think.
So we were gonna not use that as a lightning rod.
Well, it's instructive though, because it's exactly the recent example that provides an outcome that nobody likes. And so are we going to have a system
So
that does
let's
that?
move on to the next item, which is B, which we substituted the Heinz last meeting, or was the meeting before, Adam had highlighted Heinsberg has some density bonuses, so I'm not well prepared to go over them per se. But I think it would be good to at least scratch the surface, see some of the things that they're doing. And see if we want to organize this a little bit better and more concisely.
do you know where this language is in the Heinsberg zone?
Okay, so it starts out on page 4, which is in the packet. I condensed a bunch of stuff out of their zoning regulations, which is like 100 pages. So
Right,
page 4 has
right.
their lot size.
Right.
I mean, I need to figure all this out. Hang on.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is what, okay, you've got it. And they're, what they essentially call their village areas, VGs in that.
Right.
And which look a lot like ours, but then if you go to page 5, which I think is the next page in the
Right.
packet.
Yeah.
They start talking about the village growth area density and build out. 2.42.
Yeah.
And then within that section, on the next page, no, it's that page there.
It says the incentive bonus provisions of section 2.9.
Yeah, 2.9 goes into another, but
Is
in
that
this,
different?
yeah, I think it's 2.9.
No, it's provide
Yeah, 2.9
density
is-
incentives.
2.9 is one part, but then they have this part right here, from what I can see, looking at it. Like I said, I didn't really plan on doing this tonight, but it looks to me like they've got a section where if you build to energy standards or efficiencies, you can get density bonuses underneath this 2.4.
Yeah.
And then if you go to 2.9, you get density bonuses based on building small units or medium and low income units.
And then you have some communities, like I believe it's Richmond, actually give you a density bonus if you add community parking. Because they have such
Good
a
idea.
problem with parking in Richmond.
Good idea.
So there's a lot of density bonus discussion out there.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's a great concept.
Yeah.
And they have, you go through it. And the other thing was interesting is their units per acre. Even in 2.42 is quite a bit tighter than others. Of course, you gotta keep in mind, these guys are on municipal sewer and water.
Not, they have sewer right there tight in the village and that's it. They have a very small wastewater plant and they have municipal water throughout. I mean, I know we're in the north because that's where our house was.
But
They have a struggle, don't they? I mean, they're having trouble accepting development because they're limited in terms of, I think, at least sewer, if not both.
Sewer is the big one that they're,
Sewer.
yeah, and because they need to build it out more. Their biggest cash cow on the sewer for the longest time was Saputo cheese, which thus burnt and is no longer in business, and they were paying 90% of the wastewater cost for the town, so that disappeared. So now they're caught with a very archaic, very small system.
Does the system basically cover the village?
No, it doesn't even cover the whole village, I don't
Doesn't
believe.
it?
It like Lampman's, that general area, all that new housing behind the fire station, I do not believe runs sewer out there.
What about like up, is it Mechanicsville Road up that ways?
I think it runs up Mechanicsville to you, basically to that little industrial park along Mechanicsville through there. That's all tied in. It's mostly commercial that's tied into it, very little residential.
In other words, it's like us, like on site otherwise.
Yeah, it's pretty much it. They've got, and just looking at Heinsberg's growth, it's the density bonuses, I agree somewhat with density bonusing. But I also look at the growth itself they've seen. If you look at, again, behind their fire station, right there and behind McKinney's and all that, that was huge amount of growth behind that in the last few years. But it's very South Burlington.
That's on that stuff that's like, what, to the west of the police station? That's all on the system? It's not. on the
No,
system.
I don't believe that is.
And maybe that's why they haven't built more over there, which I think was their intention.
Oh,
right?
yeah, it's supposed to continue all the way out and connect to Sheldon Falls.
So are
Instead,
they,
put a rec park out instead, which is such a better decision for that property.
interesting.
Yeah. So I'm looking at section 2.9 and it's right at the beginning. I mean, it gives a very clear statement of what it's doing, provide incentives to developers of, areas in the village growth area in exchange for providing public benefits, help achieve community goals expressed in the town plan. For example, affordably and reasonably priced housing, energy conservation, public spaces and infrastructure, use of renewable energy resources, and well-designed, high-density mixed-use development. And they have a review process to allow evaluation of that. So, in principle, sounds great. It's obviously a complex thing. You'd have to really get into it and decide how much bonus for what purposes and what the review process would be.
And where?
Yeah, and where, right. So it's a lot of things to think about. I think they're reasonable things to think about. But it's a lot right now.
I think, so I'm sorry, keep.
No, go ahead. That's,
So where I'm at with this, at least what I'm thinking is, we hear a lot about incentives and whatnot, but we don't have a good concise outline, page or two of bullets of what's being done around for and what the prescription is.
Yeah,
So it'd be good to work towards condensing this, because there's a lot of stuff, even in this 10 pages out of the 100, talks about, setbacks from the Platte River and all sorts of other things that may or may not be germane to where we're at. I just wanted to scratch this a little bit more, given the fact that Adam had sent it out, and see if we have an appetite to understand incentives a little bit more, so we can get more prescriptive too. We can get them down so they're more concise and prescriptive, so we can understand if we want to.
and the other piece too is, if people wanted to either find other examples, is really make sure that we focus on communities like ours. The other thing that Heinsberg doesn't have, it doesn't have a village.
Yeah.
I remember when we lived
They're
there,
trying,
they're trying, but it still isn't a village.
right?
It's a subdivision. It's Butler Farms. It's so.
I'm glad nobody in Heinsberg is listening.
Oh, they can. I said all this
Right
drama when I
now.
lived there, trust me. So that was the big thing. And I mean, I sat through a lot of planning there. We did like a shred of the town. And I mean, we spent months going over plan as a community planning. And the big issue is there is no downtown. So comparing it to something maybe more like a Brandon or Richmond has got.
Virgins even.
Yeah, Virgins, and even maybe a little bit of Middlebury. Places that have a similar, they have a downtown with a village surrounding and near that downtown. So if we're gonna look at what other communities are doing, make sure we're comparing apples to apples, because
Yeah.
what Georgia is doing is nothing like what we want to do. But
So I just sent you a couple maps, Heinsberg's planning
Nice.
maps. So the thing that comes to my mind is, in the village planning area, we've got this whole area out on Plank Road and down on Lover's Lane that's open for development, if you will.
Hewitt too.
And Hewitt too, yeah. So those open areas, to me, makes more sense to look at what Heinsberg's trying to do, or maybe some other towns that are trying to infill and incentivize their core, than thinking of it from the point of view that we're gonna do something with what's already built out in the traditional village. So before you get, I'd say too much, Rob, what are you thinking?
So when you start talking about the bonuses and the quick look through this, it gets very convoluted pretty quick from being able to apply it cleanly. In my opinion, I know that it's a lot of different aspects to add and calculate to, but that's a lot of stuff to try to hammer out. And I didn't really fully read it enough to fully understand how much of a bonus you're getting out of all of that,
Yeah, I feel the same way, and I just wonder if there's I mean, you mentioned it, towns more like us might have a much simpler program. I mean, maybe it's just in a limited area, or maybe it's like one kind of zone, like a village type zone or whatever, but maybe there's a way to, I don't know, I've went through this, I find it very daunting to absorb, but maybe there's a smaller, neater Bristol size version of it. I don't know.
So, Melissa,
Yeah, trying to read through that. Can't understand it. It's it's very confusing, but there, it seems to me we could have some incentive it might not be the same as what Heinsberg has, but some incentive for, you know, for building green and for, you know, just various things, you know, we'd have to go through what we would prioritize of being deserving of some kind of bonus, whether it's density bonus or, you know, it, you know, I'm not sure. I'm just trying to kind of wade through it all and, you know, but I do agree that, you know, it's not necessarily, you know, we can't cut and paste.
Yeah. One of the, I believe, yeah, it's Moncton in their PUD process, you can get a bonus for affordable housing, which is actually
Yeah.
would be huge.
Pretty common.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
a big
Yeah.
one. And if we figured out how to incorporate that into our regs, that would be I think it fixes two issues. One is the housing shortage in general. It adds more, and it also targets the demographic that is missing right now in our housing markets.
Now, is
I know
that perpetual where it needs to stay that way forever?
Yep, so like Windy Ridge is one off Tyler Bridge Road in Moncton. And when Sam and Eugenie did that, they have 2 units that they put in that were affordable housing, and it's deeded that house can never be sold for more than like 3% over the, I don't know, there's some,
You know, I appreciate a certain rate.
there's a whole, it's based on the federal standard and blah, blah, blah.
It's usually about 3%.
Yeah, so that's
Is there, I do have a question. What, is there a Vermont standard or federal standard or whatever for what would be considered affordable housing?
yeah,
Percentage
yeah, there
of-
is.
Okay,
So
Where-
Slim, let's go ahead, listen.
no, I just wondered where that information, where I can find that.
I will dig that out, the exact verbiage we use, and I can email it out this week to you guys.
Thanks.
Slim? Yeah, still on mute.
Are you mute?
I'm unmuted. What can I do for you?
Okay, so I'm just passing comments on the value of this Heinsberg document for incentives and incentives in general.
Oh, I think incentives is a great idea, especially as you mentioned, affordability and green. These are things important. I couldn't, when that came up though, I couldn't get my mind off of ADUs. I'm sorry. And those are the perfect time. Like if they could be smaller, they'd be cheaper, they'd be more green, they'd be all these things we're looking for to help, you know, with this equity type of proposals that we're going through now to, you know, with the, and who needs this affordable housing, but you know, kids with first homes and older people who are downsizing, stuff like this. ADUs are perfect for that. But anyway, I know I'm off topic. So anyway, yeah, great. You're doing that's, I don't really have too much.
Okay, Shannon.
I agree that the incentives are a really good idea. This particular document to me looks very complicated and outside of what we need to be doing. But so Chris can send what they're doing maybe in Moncton, so we have a little better idea of something on the smaller scale. It doesn't quite so many layers. I think it would be a good idea.
Jeff?
Yeah, I think looking at incentives is fine, without making it too burdensome or overly complicated. And I see the affordable housing definition is 30% of the median income.
Yeah, gross income. Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah.
So another, somewhere in there in Heinsberg, when I read about house size too, so they're incentivizing small houses as well.
Oh, really? Is that part of the density bonus stuff?
Yeah, it's.
What's that?
I mean, I talked to a lot of people building and, you know, small is the new big. You know what I mean?
It's a lot of, there's not a lot of receptive.
Well, it has to, yeah, section 2.9.2 to count toward the incentive, livable floor area of the unit in question shall be no larger than. Single family units, 1,500 square feet. 2 family and multifamily units, 1,200 square feet per unit. 1,500 is pretty small.
Chris, do you know the average house size in Bristol, square footage wise? Is it like 1,800 square feet? Maybe?
I would probably 14 to 16.
Less?
I'd say around 2,000.
We have a lot of small homes in this,
Oh,
in this town.
yeah, okay, I'm thinking. the older
Village,
houses
yeah,
in the
so,
village.
yeah, see, the big houses in the village skew that, but even that.
Well, then the single mobile homes and stuff skew it the other way.
Well, that's
I
what I was just gonna
suppose.
say, even if you take out the mobile home parks, even just in the village, I mean, you had a Crescent Street, it's almost all double wides. That's less, a lot of those
How
are
big is the square footage? Is that?
1,000, 1,200 square feet tops.
1,200.
Yeah,
So 15. So
so,
is it what they're trying to do here, you think? Like trying to keep like people from building many mansions and then adding more, somehow qualifying for density and
Well,
adding
it
more?
says what they're to do. It says smaller dwelling units help to, this is 2.9.2.
Oh, yes.
Create more affordable and reasonably priced housing, allow for greater clustering. And multifamily dwellings can make more
Yeah.
efficient use of public space, require less energy. All of those are true.
in some locations, they're doing density bonusing for multifamily versus single family houses, so that you can. So that's another way to attack it too.
Yeah, I guess my question, if I could speak once more on this, is
Certainly.
given the number of things that we're trying to deal with now. In the bylaw changes. Do we want to get into this particular one now? It will add a layer of complexity. Or is that, it could be done at another time too. Or maybe that's not a good idea.
Or if it can be added at a very simplistic level. I think 10 pages of it is a little excessive.
Yeah.
Well, again, they got a 100-page zoning doc. which is- So I think, my opinion, is the time is right, and if it's something we can fold in now with some wisdom from regional planning, it would fall in with the Monterey's, the whole scope or philosophy of the grant to provide more housing, more affordable housing, that sort of thing. But
I certainly don't have any problem if Adam wants to come up with some suggested ideas that we could look at.
I wonder if they're like model, small, density building for small town type models.
Yeah.
Something out there just floating around.
okay.
I can look.
I was saying, I'd like to, I'm gonna do some more research, and we certainly, I think, would be smart to look beyond Vermont to see other places that are similar to Bristol in size and even maybe geography, but, to look at some other things just besides what they have in the towns around us.
So what I'm hearing in conclusion is we are interested in it. We have a little bit of a concern about the effort to fold it in with our current activity. But we want something that's simple and concise.
Yeah.
I think that sounds like a good solution.
Okay,
Do you want me to reach out to Adam? And get him over, you reach out to him?
I can do that.
Okay, so I just one of us has to get him prepped, so he knows that that's where we're headed. Instead of him just showing up and going, oh.
I think you're right, though. As long as we have Adam, let's get some help with it. Maybe he's got some ideas.
Yeah, and so,
So don't reinvent the wheel. People have already done this.
Exactly.
so let's move on. So that'll take care of item 2. Item 3, we at one point had a request to put an agenda item on for design review standards, which we tabled last month. We've talked about design review standards at length through the ADU process. I would like to entertain somebody to make a motion and we table this and take it off the agenda, because I think we've talked about it quite a bit without a lot of traction. So if somebody wants to do that, or if somebody is, or if we do want to start talking about design review standards, then I guess we need to start thinking about what that process might be.
I think it might have been a result of my advocacy.
It was.
And yeah, and to me, it was totally within the context of the ADU conversation, because I was just looking to the design review standards as sort of a light, as a guide to formulating some sort of light version of the site plan review. That's all. So I'm happy to take that off
So
the
we can
agenda.
drop it.
Yeah, and I think it's just within the context of ADU where it only became relevant in trying to brainstorm about that sort of light version of things.
Any objections, or everybody's in favor, don't care?
Sounds good.
Okay. Next item is, we need to have an organizational meeting, which is supposed to be the first meeting after the select board reorganizes, which technically is this meeting.
Have they reorganized officially?
I don't assume that
They have not, according to Valerie,
Yeah,
they have not.
they have not done any reappointments.
No, so they reorganize. Yeah, so that's another process, but they
Right.
reorganize
We
themselves.
typically wait, it's the first meeting after reappointments is when you would typically have your organizational meeting.
But the problem is that reappointments go on forever.
Well, no, they have the reappointments are the ones they have a meeting where they go through all the reappointments all in one shot, and that I think is on the 24th.
And yeah, I
But
think it
this
is,
Yeah,
because I,
just one day.
Okay.
he said that they hadn't gotten to it yesterday.
Okay. So
So-
April's meeting's not out recorded then.
No, it's usually April or May. It's either April or May meeting. You always do that.
So with that meeting, we elect officers. It is the one time of year that we can review and make modifications to our policies and procedures. It is also the right time of year for everybody to review the town conflict of interest procedure. So, this, an awareness, I think I put. I can't remember if I put those documents in the packet or not.
No.
I did not, so they will be in next month's packet.
Did we change the term limit or is that still the same?
The term limit for the chair,
Yes.
it is 3 years. And then the chair cannot hold any office for a year,
Any office,
any office.
you get booted off the commission or whatever board?
You just can't be an officer. You can't be a chair or like co-chair
Oh, I see.
or vice chair.
And I don't think we only have a chair and vice chair, right?
That's a little harsh.
We don't have any
They used to have
clerk or secretary.
clerk or secretary, but
Yeah, right.
Recreation director?
we now have Peggy who does that.
Treasurer.
We don't have a treasurer.
Gosh.
A chance to write checks. Yeah. That's all 25 cents or something. So it just pertains to chair and co-chair.
Okay, well, I should just let people know that I will not be seeking reappointment. That's one of the things that I come up that I have to take care of. Unfortunately, I'm teaching 2 courses this semester instead of 1, and it's just knocking me down. And I don't have any spare time. But it's been a pleasure working with everybody.
We certainly appreciated having you on the commission and your inputs.
So you'll have to elect a new co-chair, vice chair.
Yeah. Vice chair.
I'm in charge of vice.
I don't think that's what it means. Wait a minute.
Okay, so that's coming up. What did I do? Oh, I wanted to add town plan implementation actions, and I had. We had that on the agenda for last month, table it due to time. It's in the parking lot description, but there is. And I think I sent it out this afternoon, Chris. I don't know if you must have it. There,
This afternoon.
I'll wait this afternoon. Find a phone or something.
You sent it to everybody?
I believe I did.
I just got the update. I didn't get any attachments from this stuff you sent out.
Attached there, I don't attach
I
either.
didn't send out any attachments.
No, you just gave the 2 agenda changes you wanted.
But were they in the,
Packet from last
They
month.
were in last month's packet.
We have those.
So,
I got that.
I do too.
So there is a master sheet in there that is, as everybody's, which is a lot of Much more information we probably need right now. And then there's another sheet. I can send those. Send those to you.
That's for 221.
Yeah, got that. Master implementation plan. Yeah.
And then there's, so that one is everybody's. So it's a good thing to look at when you
Go ahead, share it so they can see it.
see the assignment of everybody with all the plan with all the actions. There's another one, Chris, that is the planning commission's actions only.
Stop sharing. Searching.
What's it called? File.
Yeah, we know what the name of the doc is.
It's implementation. It says master implementation plan, so I would assume it's probably implementation. You sent it out on 5/2/21. And it's,
21.
yeah, 21.
Oh, no, okay, that was the last time we looked at it.
Right,
So I had
and that was somewhere where you broke it all out by committees.
right.
So like,
So so we tended out at that point, got responses, some responses. I've sent it out again. And I know the Energy Committee's working on it. I think Conservation's working on it. And I just sent you ours.
Can you send that around, Chris?
Oh, I'm sorry, I can see.
I don't know. Unless I'm not seeing it.
I think he just sent. Second.
Well, I see the reference to the document, but I didn't see the actual document.
And I have to confess to not understanding what implementation of the town plan means.
So the town plan talks about motherhood and apple pie, all the things that we want to do. The values in the town, natural and historic.
Okay.
Transportation, all those different topics, housing, population. And then in each section, it comes up with, there's an action tier, it's called policies, procedures, and actions. So there's some very high level policies for continuing improvements in town, which drops down into a set of procedures to better describe those policies. And then against those procedures, there's an action plan of some very specific tactical things that can be done through the plan period to work towards those goals.
So if the implementation goal is X, then here's step 1, 2, 3 that you might take to get there.
That's what these actions here are.
So, and they're assigned to various boards and functions. The select board
I see. They're
gets
parceled
picked on
out,
because
yeah.
they're the bulk of it. And then so the planning commission has been assigned or got assigned stuff as well. And in 2020, which is 2 years ago, we took a look at, or I took a look at and kind of parsed them out a little bit and grouped them based on where we were headed with working at that point, we were working towards the housing initiative, which we're in the middle of right now. And there's other, by grouping them, it sort of clumped them together. So they're, in my mind, they were at least more manageable to understand and work towards. And I think there's like 3 different groups, and I'll have to say,
Seems like you have 4 groups listed.
yeah, well,
5 groups. And your list isn't terrible, actually. The select board is like 6 pages.
Yeah. Well, they are the select board. They get paid the big bucks.
Yeah.
And I apologize. I thought-
And they actually have the authority to
Do
do
it right,
things that should
exactly.
be done.
Yeah.
You all,
I do apologize. I thought I had sent those out to you this afternoon, of course. You're right.
We would have missed it. I mean,
No,
No.
no, I don't. Here in a consensus that nobody's gotten them. So,
so you know, I'm gonna get reelected chair.
Ouch.
Maybe he just needs more practice, more practice.
so let's see.
So the idea is like, how do we take some more steps in those directions as they're laid out? Because they seem like good,
Yeah.
it's a good flow of stuff, workflows.
My concept at least is, as when we go to work our town plan again, which is 2028. It sounds like a long ways away, but it's not. We've got some history as to what we've worked on and what the value that some of these peer groups have about. I mean, some groups have said that's not a priority of ours. You know, it's like, okay, why are we, the planning commission, figuring out that that's a priority if the people that are close to that issue think it is or not, you know? So I'd like to make it a tool that gets us in a situation when we go work on the plan, which is probably 2027, to understand what we had for the tasks, for the vision that we had, and how well we're holding up to those tasks and visions for that matter, and make it realign with what the vision will be when we rewrite the plan in 2027.
Sounds good.
So did I send it to you?
Yeah, I just started thinking through
Okay.
it.
So actually I sent it to everybody this time. Maybe. There's 3 docs there. There's the master plan that is all encompassing. There's a breakout of ours. And then there's a document that is, I'm sorry, I sent a Word document, not a
It's
PDF.
fine.
Well, Apple users don't like it. So,
That's me. You too.
Plenty of problems.
I'll follow up with a PDF. for it. But anyway, that document rationalizes grouping our tasks the way that the 2021 responses were made. So I would love somebody that feels like they can update this, take it upon themselves to give us a great sense of community participation. Or I can hack away at it again.
What are you asking for?
Updates. So each one of these tasks, we should be putting in there for March 2023, where we're at or what we're doing, if anything.
I couldn't lend much help because I'm short-termer here, sort of. But I'd be happy to sit with you and try to help as much as I could. I mean,
Yeah. Let's plan a time then.
yeah. How would we do that offline? I can email you. And
Yeah, and some of these are like the childcare needs. That was one that's a huge one in the focus of the ARPA committee. That was in the top 3. And 2 of the recommendations we made to spend the most money was towards help solve the childcare issues. So there is traction with some other groups on some of this. So
There is a hot button, I shouldn't say hot button, but there is interest in on the school board, the district school board, along with obviously the state has some interest right now. So John and I will sit down and kind of hash this out and then present next month what.
do you call this like the implementation
Their,
Grid or
oh, what do I
this,
don't know what I
it's
call it.
like
Matrix.
matrix. I'm gonna say matrix.
Okay,
Sure. The people's faces.
any questions, concerns, comments about where we're going with that? It's mostly it to document what we're doing along with other groups. Now we'll move on to item 4, which is administrative matters. And Melissa, we're at the point we're going to talk about the minutes.
And
Yeah,
let
I
me
just-
share.
I would like, if you could please add that I was present last month,
Okay,
It's important.
unless you know something I don't, I mean, you know.
well, we can do that.
Thanks.
Any other comments about the minutes? So I entertain a motion to approve the minutes with the correction noted.
So moved.
Thank you.
Okay,
Second.
okay. It's such a traditional thing. I don't think you need a second on minute, but it's so
that right?
traditional.
Because you can't not approve minutes.
Ultimately,
There is no such thing as not approving minutes. You don't vote on
gotta have
minutes.
it.
There's a motion to accept them as presented, and then the chair's approved.
So
It's a
everybody's,
unique thing,
everybody's,
but everyone votes on them.
everybody's in favor of approving the minutes, raise your hand, say yes. Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you. Zoning administrator report.
Nothing really right now. It's slow. We've got a breather.
Okay,
It's been nice.
ARPA report, Rob.
No report from last time. I don't think anything changed. There was some documentation that went out around town meeting. That was about it. I
Okay.
believe.
Rob, do you agree that we could probably pull this off the list for now? Because we as a committee are done.
Yes, there are no more meetings. There is nothing more scheduled apart from the actual presentation to the select board.
And that'll be taking place on Monday.
Okay, and thank you, Rob, and you, Chris, too, for updating us and representing the planning commission on that.
What's gonna happen is that, I'm sorry, I was tuned out for a second.
That's fine.
They made a recommendation
We made a recommendation of 20 items that we sent to the select board.
and they'll pick one or more.
In theory, based on our estimated costing, all of them should be able to be funded or at least partially funded.
You have a favorite on the list?
I do.
What is it?
I want to be partial.
We take it as neutral.
So one of my favorites and one of my biggest ones that I advocate for was increasing, redoing and increasing the skate park.
Great idea.
It was one of the biggest
Gets
used,
used hard.
and during COVID, it was probably one of the #1 outdoor used pieces of recreation we have in our community. So that was
Bike thing too, the
the pump track.
pump track.
But yeah, that was a big one. That was my first one.
Great, good one.
Cool.
That and a message sign over the fire station.
And what?
An informational sign at the fire station. Out on the front.
I like that idea.
Yeah, so those are two of mine that I love. We all had them, didn't we, Rob?
Sure.
Did you have a favorite, Rob? One that
No,
just for whatever reason you liked?
no favorites.
How long was this process?
A year.
Okay, over a year, right?
About a year.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was March or April last year we started.
Yeah,
Well, thank you guys.
okay, for miscellaneous correspondence, there was few things. I'll just summarize. There was a notification of an update to the energy planning maps that the Vermont Center for Geographic Information has. There are reappointments out there. So if you haven't already, Jeff and Slim, can you let Valerie know your intentions? You did? Okay, thank you. You're gonna, well, I won't put you on the spot, Slim. And then, there's an upcoming schedule of events that the email is in the packet. For diversity, equity, inclusion training. For town employees. And I'm not sure, I didn't get it specifically, so I either scrolled by and deleted it somehow, because I got it from a co-board member from the school board.
Yeah.
But it's,
I can't find it in my email either, just so you know.
yeah,
I don't know if it was pulled back or what, the original one, but
but I think the intent was to focus on employees and then boards and volunteers after that, so maybe it was intentional.
yeah, so it's mandatory for department heads. We recommended for employees, and then somehow they're disseminating it down to board level.
So that is the extent of correspondence, miscellaneous correspondence this month. So any comments or concerns, actions about our administrative matters?
I'll let you know I did re-up.
Okay, thank you.
Me too.
So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, come on, somebody say it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Yeah. All those in the favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.